So I'm going to talk about designing VR for humans. Um, First of all, welcome to the spaceship. I've never been here before, actually, so welcome me to the spaceship. But I just wanted to tell you guys about something really interesting. We found this primitive human species. It's kind of they're kind of strange. We decided to keep it as a pet, and it seems to kind of freak out in our strange environment. So I thought that I'd kind of talk about that experience, and we created this device to keep it happy. These humans are kind of finicky about the things that they like and what they don't like. So here's the results of our tests based on our findings of human evolution. In case any of you happen to want to, get your own humans, this is a typical human shape. It's actually very strange. I know they come in different. There's a little bit higher, smaller, a little bit wider, a little bit different, but they're kind of weird looking. We found that if we input about 43 degrees Celsius, then one of the main outputs is what we're calling sweat. It's kind of a mixture of like water and salt sort of thing. We found that if we input breakfast, some of the main outputs were energy, happiness, and then there was some other substance that came out eventually. But we found if we input mismatched vestibular and ocular information, one of the main outputs was actually that same breakfast. So, yeah, that was kind of an unexpected output there. If we input a scary object close to the face, now this is scary based on what humans have evolved to. So if they for example, they evolved to, avoid spiders, for example, because they'd be poisonous. And if they recognize the shape of a spider close to their face, some of the main outputs would be a dodge, a scream, and some adrenaline going through their system. If you input a confusing UI, your main output is frustration. And you input an easy UI, you get really fast task completion out of these humans. So if you input a good experience, then your output is happiness. It looks kind of like this, kind of the corners of their mouths go up. And if you input marketing for a good experience, the output is this stuff called money. So it's like little pieces of paper and data that they give to each other to get things that they want. So if you want to try to make humans happy, then some things you can do is try relying on nature first and nurture second. So the things that they're born with as babies rather than the culture that they grow up with or the languages that they learn, that sort of thing. So that'd be things like object features to draw attention, understandable spatial relationships, color with evolutionary reasons. For example, when humans see the color red, it tends to raise their heart rate because it might be that they are hurt and they are bleeding. The stuff that comes out of them is red. And it could also be that they've killed something, so they are getting ready to eat. And so their fast food chains and things will use red to, in their logos. They have nesting instincts, they have exploration instincts, they have defensive, food gathering, reproductive, parental instincts. There's a lot of layers to what all humans seem to have in common regardless of where they grow up. So some other things that we found out about our human is that it seems to have a field of view of about 210 degrees. Their interpupillary distances between their eyes tend to be between 52 and 78 millimeters. It's a little bit higher for the males than the females, but our device that we were putting on it is a 100-degree field of view, so it cuts some of that off. But there's also some things to keep in mind when dealing with the things that we're presenting to the human, because the edges aren't necessarily that clear in the peripheral. So there's kind of more of a clearly visible and a not as clear area. So it seems that our main content that we wanted to show them would be in the center area. So some other things that we found out based on maybe some research from some other people also. The depth stuff is actually mostly from Alex Drew of Samsung. Is if you get down in the closer areas, there's a cross-eyed area that is just a no-go zone for content. And then about at 50 centimeters away, below that you have eye strain for long periods of time if you have UI elements in that space. And between that and 10 meters, you still have a strong sense of 3D. And from 10 meters to 20 meters, there's still some sense of 3D. But at the point of 20 meters on, it seems to be pretty much just flat as far as they seem to start. It starts to get to the point where it's a pixel for pixel similarity between what they're seeing in each eye. So things beyond that would be good for skyboxes and that sort of stuff. So you kind of end up with this idea of foreground, midground, and background, which is common to theater and filmmaking. The range of motion that we found, up, comfortable, this again is from Alex Drew, is 20 degrees up is comfortable, 60 degrees is the max, 12 degrees down, and 40 degrees is the max. Then side to side, you have 30 is comfortable, 55 is max. And this comes from the Viorama guys, is that 15 degrees max was what they found for doing the zooming in. So, yeah, it seems like maybe some people want to take photos of it. But so that's field of view. There's also field of view and rotation. If you combine them, you get content zones. So there's obviously the no-no zone of anything close to the head. And if you go 30 degrees plus that extra what you can see on the side, it seems that 70 degrees to each side is a comfortable content zone where you're not having to rely on the peripheral and you're not having to extend your neck in, or the humans don't have to extend their necks in those extra ways. But then this peripheral zone of 105 degrees is where you're straining to the side and you can kind of see it. And this curiosity zone is basically just for if they're sitting down, they actually have to kind of get up and turn around a little bit just out of pure curiosity for what is even there. And then, like I said, it's the foreground, midground, and background. So between 0.5 meter and 1.5 meters seems to be the foreground area. 1.5 to 20 meters is your midground. And then 20 meters on is background content. So here's some consolidated pro tips for your humans user interface. This isn't canon. Take it or leave it. All of these rules can be broken based on what the experience is that you're wanting to create. But these are just some things that I found in researching other people's stuff, reading all the forums, watching the videos, and consolidating what I thought you guys would want to know rather than having to do all the research yourself when it comes to user interface and user experience. So one of the useful things is to use line of sight to reveal information. This is something that Elite Dangerous, the Leap Motion Planetarium, the Siemens demo by Masters of Pi does this, and the idea is that these animals in environments with too much going on are more likely to miss a critical detail and die. So the brain sends signals to escape. They have kind of this fight or flight mentality. So also, humans fear the unknown and have a desire to explore and understand so they don't die. So there's this desire for more information, but also a desire for simplicity. So minimalism helps to keep the environment simple and less stressful, but having information available immediately is pleasing. So if it's in the peripheral, then you don't show the extra information, and then when they look at it with like casting a ray to see if it's colliding with a certain area, then you show more information or user interface elements. Don't show what you don't know. The source for this is the Stanford Human Interaction Lab. AltSpace VR, I was talking to the guy from that, and he introduced me to this concept, and also Jody Medich of Leap Motion says the same thing, is that you can have proprioceptive disparity. So the background on this is that if a human ate something poisonous, it might cause mismatched signals in their senses. And the brain reacts by making the body sick to vomit what they ate, and this is why vestibular and ocular mismatch makes humans sick. This also breaks suspension of disbelief. In the case of proprioceptive disparity, it's not really something that makes you sick so much as it just breaks the immersion. But the concept there is that you're better off just not showing an elbow rather than showing one in the wrong place. So if you know where the hand is, but you don't know whether it's like this or like this, you might just want to not show the elbow at all. Looking left and right is easier while standing, and looking up and down is easier while sitting. This was kind of a, yeah, I can see everybody wants to do it. You can stand up and try it if you want. It's true. But it's just the way that these human creatures or muscles have evolved this way. And I heard this from that Leap Motion UX designer. And I immediately did it and stood up and did it at my desk, and I was like, no way, it's totally, yeah. So it makes sense that you would design content for those different use cases. So if you have a standing experience versus a sitting experience, then you might want to design your content differently. And this columns to the side format, Josh from Mozilla was suggesting that because we have this sort of thing, rather than a scrolling downwards interface, it makes a lot more sense to go back to kind of the column layout that was a throwback more to magazine and newspaper days. Another pro tip for taking care of your human is that 5 centimeters separation on near UI elements is as clear as a drop shadow in 2D. So we use the drop shadows to suggest depth on our 2D interfaces. But object identification based on parallax and convergence is hardwired into the human's brain. And so just having that slight depth when you're in that foreground plane especially tends to have a really large effect. So use Z-depth for hierarchical UI elements. And you can use that in conjunction with depth, drop shadows and things like that. Flat planes look convex from distortion, compensate with dynamic plane curvature. The brain breaks suspension of disbelief with unexpected physical characteristics. So Steam VR, if you try that out, when you lean in and out, the curvature of the plane will change to adjust for the fact that barrel distortion is being applied to the image, but then being kind of unapplied by the lens. And it's not exactly perfect. And so you kind of have to adjust the 2D plane curvature based on the distance from the user. I think that the best way to test this is to do something similar to, in the film world, you calibrate a camera based on using a grid. And you can see the distortion of the lines near the edges. And so if you can test the content that you're wrapping on the polygons using a grid and see whether you, with your eyes in the headset, see them as straight lines or curving, then you'll be able to get a better reference for whether you're actually going to be distorting that video or image content. Sound helps for lack of tactile feedback. I think a lot of you probably already know this. The human senses work together. They can smell things, and it can give them the illusion of taste, which is really strange. So sound feedback on actions can help if you're using something like a Leap Motion, and your finger is just going through the thing. If you have a sound play, then it can help them feel like they actually touched something. Doesn't always solve it, just helps. So if they touch something, play a corresponding sound. Take care of your humans responsibly. Another pro tip is human scale helps spatial cognition. This is from, again, the UX designer at Leap. Humans come automatically trained to recognize distances relative to themselves. So if you're going to use props and elements that humans are familiar with, either go all out on making the size different or keep it at the scale that they're used to. So if you're doing something like a Jack and the Beanstalk world where everything is huge, then that makes sense. But if you have, for example, just one mug that is too large, it can be, a immersion-breaking detail. So help your human navigate, remember, and find things by using real sizes, because they're used to organizing their spaces, understanding and remembering how to locate objects in those spaces based on familiar shapes and sizes. Podiums help them feel balanced. I put a picture of a podium. I have a podium. So vertigo is the reason for this, because if I was on the edge of a stage right now and I had no podium, I would feel probably a little bit off balance, like maybe I was going to fall off. If you've ever stood near a cliff that doesn't have railing, or on a balcony before railing has been installed, then you will experience this, that you feel like you're going to fall over. So for standing experiences especially, it's that the humans feel more comfortable to not be falling off of an edge if they know that they can grab onto something. So ground them with elements in the foreground plane, particularly for standing experiences. So for this sort of thing, I have my user interface right here. In virtual reality, this can be a changeable user interface. So again, foreground, midground, and background. Use aspects of physical reality, even if your art style is not photorealism. So this is something that several people have talked about. Basically, immersion is suspension of disbelief. I would say that, presence is the subconscious suspension of disbelief. So the not choosing to, but just having it happen. So the brain accepts a presented reality more readily if physical properties behave appropriately. So that would be things like the way light bounces, imperfections, and reflections. So you should use optimized normal maps and shaders to achieve believable materials and corners. So the corner of this is not a 90-degree polygon. You got to have it bevel and have it chicane and those sorts of things. Plus there's all of the problems with the texture and that sort of thing, making it imperfect. And then if you can, bake ambient occlusion and ray tracing for things that are going to be static, so that you have this orange. If this was a lit up room, the orange of the wall would be casting orange onto the floor and things around it. So that's all the pro tips for taking care of your humans for now. Hopefully you'll be able to keep them happy. Some more UX and UI resources. These are the names that I was referencing. Alex Chu of Samsung, Josh Carpenter of Mozilla, Jody Medich of Leap Motion. These are some useful links for talks where they give on these sorts of things. And then just one more thing, if any of you have humans already, or you're interested in having some and taking care of them, just don't forget to feed them and keep them watered. This one, we forgot about this one a few thousand Earth years ago, and yeah. Anyways, so that's all. I'm Mike Alger, and